Time to wake up. It's Saturday morning. Find some milk and cereal. Grab a bowl and spoon. No, a bigger spoon. Head to the living room and take a seat on the floor while Joseph and Chris present to you Saturday Morning Cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoon Boom! This is a show where we wake up with the Saturday morning sun, plopped on the floor of Big Boy Sugar Cereal, all our favorite cartoons, both old and new. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Chris.
And this morning, we watched Cybersix.
It's one word instead of two.
It is. So it's like Cybersix.
Cybersix, not Cybersix, it's Cybersix.
Yeah,
Yes,
which is funny
fast.
because her tattoo said Cyber 6,
Space
and sometimes
6, yeah.
referred to as like Cyber-6, but...
And that's why you got to vet your tattoo artist before you go in. And this was brought to us by DoggyVision37 on YouTube. He has suggested many things for us in the past, so thank you again, DoggyVision, for this latest one.
And the show Cybersix ran from 1999 to 2000, created by Chu Takara, Carlos Maglia, and Carlos Trio, based on the comic strip of the same name by Carlos Maglia, which came out in 91, or which started in 91. I guess the character was created at that point. It was produced by TMS Entertainment and NOA, ran for one season, 13 episodes on the Teletoon Network in Canada, Fox Kids Network in the USA, Kids Station in Japan, and Telefe in Argentina. And for a short synopsis written by Kenneth Chisholm, female android battles her evil creator's forces as a mysterious superhero.
I gotta say, Kids Station is very on the nose. I mean, it's like they don't even have to really advertise it much because it speaks for itself. So good on you, Japan. That was smart.
Yeah, Fox Kids, it's like, is it for children who are also foxes? I don't know.
That part confuses me. So I never watched Fox Kids for that reason because I didn't think it was
not
for me.
being a fox, I mean, you're not allowed to. It's kind of segregates in that way. If it's just Kid Station, it's like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into. I, too, am a kid, and therefore I am allowed to watch this station.
This is why their country is more advanced than ours.
That's the only reason, yes.
Yes.
So who are some of the actors who played in this show?
All right, so the voices of Adrian and Cybersix, or is she called Cyber6? I don't know. Was Kathy Westluck. She voiced the character of Shampoo and Ranma Half. She was Trunks, Chiaotzu, and Puar in Dragon Ball Z, Ken in Powerpuff Girls Z, Spike and Mayor in My Little Pony's Friendship is Magic. The character of Lucas was voiced by Michael Dobson, who was the voice of the Supreme Kai in Dragon Ball Z, Blob and Caliban from X-Men Evolution, Starscream in Transformers Armada, Energon, and Cybertron, Mojo Jojo in Powerpuff Girls Z, and he was the voices of Batman and Alfred in Batman Black and White, which I'd never heard of, and now I want to know what this is about.
Is that a movie or a show?
Show, apparently.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The voice of Dr. Von Richter was Terry Klassen, who was the voice of Cutman from the Mega Man animated series, Krillin and Master Roshi from Dragon Ball Z, and the voice of Baby Sylvester from Baby Looney Tunes. Voice of Jose was provided by Alex Doduk, who doesn't have a whole lot on his resume, so I'm skipping him now. The voice of Lori and Elaine was Janice Jod. She also voices Sarah and Lee from Ed, Edd and Eddy, Pinkie Pie in My Little Pony, but not Friendship is Magic, but lots of movies. There's all these offshoots of Friendship is Magic, and she voices Pinkie Pie in those for some reason. And finally, the voice of Julian was provided by Andrew Francis, who was also the voice of Dende from Dragon Ball Z, Iceman from X-Men Evolution, Bobby Green from Powerpuff Girls Z, and the character of Max from Max Steel.
So for a few tasty marshmallows that are a big bowl of Cybersix cereal, based on the Argentinian comic series, the story is also used to create the Argentinian live-action TV series Cybersix, which is why we were confused trying to find the show in the first place, because there's also a live-action TV series that came out in 1995, but it did really poorly, ended up being canceled. Yeah, so this is kind of the follow-up to that. So they're like, you know what, live action didn't work, let's try animation.
Okay, so does this like pick up where that left off, or is it like a totally rebooted thing?
All of it's based on the comic series, so it just is kind of a reboot in animated form.
Okay, got it. Interesting.
And kind of toned down in a lot of different ways for kids, and I'll get into that. 2 seasons of 13 episodes were originally intended to be made, but those plans were canceled after the first season due to conflicts between production studios. So not because the show did bad or did poorly, but only because there was a conflict between the studios that were producing it, which sucks because just from what I saw of it, I enjoyed it. So I could have easily seen it carrying on, but it's unfortunate that it got cut out because of the higher ups.
Yeah, that really sucks. It's stupid when, like, you know, politics and red tape get in the way of, like, you know, of an art form like this, like any kind of TV show. Like when it's not even the show that's failing, it's just the people in charge are failing to do things.
Yeah, just to be adults about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's part of why it was toned down for kids. In the original Cybersix comic book, it was alluded that Von Richter and Jose were Nazis, and this is why Jose would always march around like an SS soldier.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a tiny Hitler without the mustache, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he's dressed like a Hitler Youth, and he just does that thing where he's like lifting his legs real high.
Yeah.
Essentially, he did everything except do the salute thing, yeah. So, okay, Data 7, who is this Black Panther that we meet, is in fact Cybersix's brother, Cyber 29, who was killed in an accident and had his consciousness transplanted into a panther. I don't know why.
I was wondering what's up. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So is it a real panther or is it a cyborg panther?
That's a good question. I'm assuming it's a cyborg panther, but I can't say for sure. All it says here is it was transplanted into a panther. In the second episode of this series is where we're introduced to Data 7, but we didn't watch that one, so I'm not certain of the exact origin of it.
Yeah, I was kind of confused when we got to him in this episode. I'm like, where did this panther come from all of a sudden? He
yeah, it's like, why does she have
and
a
no
cool
one questions
panther
it.
sidekick? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, also, she is one of the many individuals in the Cyber series who are all ultimately terminated because of their innate humanity and sense of good. So we get to hear almost right away that Cybersix is a failed experiment or in his mind, a failed experiment of Von Richter's. So what I had read was that he made like 5,000 of these cyber units, but because they all started to have too much of their own like personality and their humanity was coming out and they were too like good, kind-hearted, like he was having them all terminated. She managed to escape this, and I guess her brother did as well. So the one Cyber 29, who has turned into Data 7, the Panther, was also escaped this essentially quote unquote Holocaust of these cybers. There was too much good in their hearts.
If you're a Nazi experiment and you are considered a failure, that's kind of a compliment in a way, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is no exception here. She's a failure because the goodness in her heart was coming out. That's all I had as far as the Marshmallows goes. Had you ever heard of this show before?
Oh, definitely not. This was not on my radar whatsoever.
Even like when we had heard about it and we were trying to look it up, I was still confused as to what it actually was. And even when we started watching it, I was like, is this Aeon Flux? Like, what is this? Like, what are we watching right now?
It's kind of similar in that way.
Yeah, it's like kind of a mix between, at least in the opening part, a mix between Aeon Flux and Van Helsing is what I had written down because that's what I was thinking because of the way she was dressed and kind of the way it's stylized, not as like over stylized as Aeon Flux is the cartoon. Yeah, but it's very similar in the slender frame, at least with the main character and especially with the hair, the way it's done.
Yeah, some of the design and animation remind me of Batman the Animated Series as well. Just like the really dark darks. I mean, they were really rich blacks being used a lot. I mean, just half the screen at pretty much all times is black.
That's true. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into the episodes we watched for today's show. The very first episode, highest rated episode, finally random listener chosen episode. Order may vary depending on how these episodes fall chronologically, but of course we have to start with the very first episode, which was The Mysterious Shadow, Season 1, Episode 1. In this one, after befriending assistant Adrian Siedelman, high school teacher Lucas Amato, not knowing that Adrian is that's too much information. I'm not going to go into it.
I don't know how to describe Adrian. This kind of nerdy, strange teacher, I guess.
With the very effeminate voice, who's supposed to be a male teacher.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It definitely is supposed to be a male teacher, very effeminate voice. I just thought it was just a really bad voice acting job at first. I wasn't making the connections right away.
I mean, it was almost like the moment that I saw them, I was like, they look really similar, but it could just be character design. But the suspicions are there, and I think like watching it right away, your suspicions will arise also, and you'll kind of automatically assume what Lucas has trouble figuring out at first.
Lucas doesn't really figure it out till the last episode, right?
I think you're right, actually. Yeah, I don't think he ever really figures it out until she almost literally tells him. But we'll get there. We'll talk about that. It kind of opens with these big, these are also these big
old Frankenstein
looking guys. Yeah. Who are the genetic creations, kind of genetic henchmen of von Richter. And they're attacking all these people and kidnapping them for what at this point we're not sure of.
All of the Frankenstein dudes have some sort of like black design on their face. Did you notice that? And some of them are the same, but not all of them.
I think that it's supposed to just be shadow. Like, I think it's just kind of over. Like, this is sort of, if you want to look at it like a noir, I bet that the comics, I'm not sure what the comic art looked like, but I bet it's very noir-ish in the sense that shadows are played with a lot. And so it doesn't necessarily work the same in animation because those shadows were kind of fixed on their face, which is why it kind of looked like a design or face paint. But I really think those are supposed to just be kind of shadow from like an overarching brow or something like that.
Yeah, there was a few design elements that I can tell they used. I'm assuming they took from the comics and they didn't translate well. The other thing being like I guess it's supposed to be like stubble or shorter hair. It's just drawn like rectangles all over people. It's so weird.
Oh yeah, like arm hair. Arm hair. Like I wasn't sure what it was at first, especially on Lucas, because I was like, are those cuts? Are those band-aids all over him? What is that? Because his arm hair is blonde, just like his regular hair, and I'm like, oh okay, so that's supposed to be his arm hair. As I was noticing it on other people, but it's literally like you said, just little rectangles on him. Like they don't look like hairs. And I get that it's stylized like that, and probably to reflect what's in the comics, but. Like you said, it doesn't translate as well. The animation's still beautiful, but there's just some options that were like, I don't know if you should have gone that direction necessarily.
Yeah, I'll give you that though. Like the animation itself was really fluid, which looked really nice. And, one of my favorite things is just the animation of Cybersix, jumping through the air and stuff, because her cape like billows out so big, and it's just like, it's gorgeous to watch, honestly. Like the action is beautifully done. But yeah, there are just some really weird choices done in this thing.
I'm just presuming that it's based off the comics, but I wouldn't see any other reason they would go that direction with it, because it's a bold choice if it's just something they decided to go with in the cartoon versus the comic.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was it's kind of weird. So like I go back and forth between the directing of this animation, because it's like there are some scenes that are beautiful. Like there's one scene, and I don't remember if it's this episode or just the next episode, where Lucas is in like this bar. His cup is filling up with, I guess it's supposed to be coffee. They're zoomed in on like that cup of coffee with the steam coming out, and you see in the background Adrian walking in through the door. And I was like, that was drawn like a movie, and it looked gorgeous the way they did that. But then there's also like a scene where it's just like some random talking, like you're just hearing voiceover, but the camera is like weirdly zoomed in on Lucas's crotch, like the crotch of his pants is filling up the entire screen. And I'm like, what is this? What is this supposed to be?
It's this funny thing also where since Adrian as a teacher is a new teacher, like essentially kind of like her trying to blend in or camouflage amongst everyone in this town. The town, I can't remember the name of it. It starts with an M, but it's this town. I believe it's in France. After meeting up with Cybersix, or after encountering her, Lucas meets up with Adrian, and he's kind of describing Cybersix to him, to who he thinks is a him. I don't know, that's weird. Okay, so he's describing Cybersix to Adrian and saying she's like strange but beautiful. Ultimately, like we're seeing the failures of these Frankenstein dudes, and led by this just other henchmen. And because of that, Von Richter calls in his quote unquote son, Jose. And Jose is, like we said, he's just a little like Hitler youth. He's got these big circle glasses, and he doesn't look like intimidating at all, but he has a very like Napoleon complex, like demanding presence about him, or in a whiny way, I guess. But he is trying to lead this, what turns out to be counterfeit money is what they're making, like counterfeit cash. So they've got all these kind of scientists on hand to try to like work this out. And this is what, at least in the first episode, Cybersix is trying to foil, is this happening.
When Cybersix finally goes in to take them down, it is very Batman-like. Like, she takes the lights out first, and then she like takes one dude down by like grabbing him from behind and pulling him backwards and knocking him out and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, man, she's like a lady Batman. A bat lady.
The fighting is very cool. It's just, she's very ninja-like in that or very Batman-like, like, as you said. And she's got enhanced strength because she has these cyber enhancements. And so she's like flipping over them, kicking. She does a lot of kicking in the back of their necks. And we also come to find, this is stepping back a little bit, but the way that Lucas is dragged into it is that after one of these Frankenstein things is defeated, they drop these little green vials. And so he picks it up and like takes it with them, and so it's being tracked down because the enemies are trying to get their vials back, and it looks like it turns out to be some sort of acid, but what it actually is what Von Richter calls sustenance to keep these genetic mutations basically active, to keep them powered or to keep them alive, really. We find out that Cybersix is also reliant on this because throughout the episode we see her arm kind of glow green, and she's in obvious pain, and so she needs this as well. In the same way that like a vampire needs blood because she's being kind of like or she's underpowered or she's being weakened by lack of this. The reason I say vampire at all is because another way it was toned down from the comics is in the comics, she actually has to get this sustenance, bite the necks of the henchmen. She doesn't have fangs, so she doesn't suck it out of them, but she bites the necks in order to puncture them so that the green ooze will kind of leak out, and then she drinks it straight from their necks.
Oh, cool. That's so weird. I like the idea, though. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they would have kept that in.
I know. It kind of makes more sense than them just suddenly dropping green vials. That's very video game-like, where it's like you kill the enemy and then they drop health packs or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I prefer the other way.
Yeah, it doesn't translate over as well, but again, it was just toned down for kids, so they're not going around biting other kids' necks, I guess.
And so the big reveal of this episode is that, and that nobody else knows this, is that we find out that Adrian and Cybersix are the same person. I mean, it's kind of weird, as in, like, why pick a male teacher to impersonate? I mean, there's no real problem with it. I was just like, well, that's strange. I mean, my default would be to just assume a different identity, but not like wear a wig and stuff, because I feel like it'd be pretty obvious. And it is kind of obvious.
It's almost like Superman Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Except it's like if it were Superman like Cloretta Kent or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the only thing different is she puts on glasses and puts her hair up a certain way. And like, that's the only difference between Adrian and Cybersix, aside from the way they dress. You know, I will give credit though, because there is that meme going around right now of Zoe Deschanel with like, you see her how she usually is, and then there's that picture of her with her hair different and no glasses, and she looks like a completely different person. And then it kind of gives a little bit more credence to the whole like Superman style of hiding your identity. So maybe she should play Cybersix in a new adaptation.
Yeah, just reboot it and put her as a star. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, without bangs, Zoe Deschanel looks like a completely different person.
That's so weird.
So for the next episode we watch for today's show, Bluebirds of Horror, Season 1, Episode 6. This was my pick because it has horror in it. And of course, I mean, that's my default.
I knew you were going to pick it because I was like, which episode are we going to do? And I'm like looking right at the title of that one, right as you say it. And I'm like, I knew it.
Yeah.
You're very
well,
easy to read.
It's also kind of centered in the middle. I am easy, like I'm predictable, but it was worth it. This was a fun episode. In this one, the swarm of hostile birds invade the city. Cybersix and Lucas learn that the birds are possessed by Jose and pause only whenever a new broadcast. Man, these descriptions are way too descriptive. Like, you're just telling the whole story. I don't need all that.
I also think that like calling them possessed by Jose is weird. Like that's where he's not possessing them. He's controlling them via radio waves. Yeah. They make it sound like Jose himself has assumed the consciousness of a bird. And
it's interesting that they call it Bluebirds of Horror because it's like, it seems to be all birds or any birds in the vicinity, because I think there's more than just the bluebirds. But the bluebirds are the primary culprits, I guess.
Well, I think the blue ones were the only ones that attacked, but the other birds were like standing alongside with them, like kind of creeping along and following people. But I think the blue ones were the only ones that physically tried to injure or kill people.
It was weird. And this is, we get to see Jose controlling them, possessing them in the sense that like he is controlling them with the radio waves from the electronics. While this device is on, it shuts off communication between any other sort of electronic devices. So your TV, internet, whatever is just static because this is blocking any signals. And so the idea is it's very supervillainy in the sense that the idea is because Von Richter and Jose are cutting off communications and also controlling an army of birds, like that is their plan for world domination.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Apparently. It's
not the best plan, but I mean, it has credence to it because it is at least very annoying and inconvenient for everyone.
That's how it is. They're going to annoy them into submission. Yeah. Like everyone's outside. They're like, man, this is really inconvenient. I guess I'll just go with whatever he says.
Like everyone's afraid to leave their houses because they're like, birds are attacking me. Like it doesn't look like anyone dies. And probably this is another one of those things where I bet in the comics, if this was a comic storyline, like maybe they were being picked apart like Alfred Hitchcock birds.
Yeah.
But in this, it's just like the birds are like pecking on them and they're just like, like stupid birds. And they just run inside.
Who knows what kind of diseases these birds are carrying right now.
Filthy creatures. Yeah.
Oh, man. So this is one thing I noticed in this episode that I had to point out, and it's a little off topic, but like going back to Adrian and Cybersix, like the differences between them, I noticed something in this episode, and that's the fingernails change. So when she's assuming the role of Adrian, she has very short nails, kind of like a guy. But when she's Cybersix, her real self, she has long fingernails, like long and painted. And I'm like, when she changes into her Cybersix outfit, is she putting on fake nails each time? Because I feel like that takes that's a lot of work to become a female superhero.
Maybe some of her cybernetic enhancements are retractable claws like Wolverine.
Yes, it's not even claws, it's just fingernails. Like her secret power is she can grow her fingernails really quickly.
Automatic manicure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's some girls out there that I think would appreciate that, and some guys.
I
know a few guys that would go for that.
Totally.
Yeah, I would.
The birds are attacking. People keep getting rushed inside. We see Lucas really playing a bigger part in assisting Adrian or assisting Cybersix as these stories progress. And this is no exception, where his idea is to trap these birds inside the, I guess his idea and Cybersix, because they're working together, trap all these bluebirds inside of the school, inside of his classroom. He does so by kind of boarding up the walls, making these like little makeshift lift doors. He lures them inside and then traps them in there. And then at the same time, Data 7, the Panther, who is also Cyber 29, we're introduced to him this episode, or at least Chris and I are, because this is the first time we see him. He, at the same time, is bringing these birds in as well to keep them contained so that ultimately Cybersix will be able to travel unencumbered or, so that she's not being bothered by birds when she's trying to get to this tower to stop the transmission.
So she's not being bothered by birds.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can really say. Like, it didn't seem like a huge threat, but...
I mean, you're not wrong. It's not a big threat, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had a few issues with this episode, mainly with scenes with Jose, partly just because I feel like Jose's super obnoxious. Like, I hate every time that character's on screen. But I feel like they reused a lot of animation of his in this episode. Because there is I would say a good eighth of this episode is Jose laughing maniacally and pointing at the camera while giving a monologue. It just happens over and over and over. And there was one in particular I know that they used twice for sure, and maybe a third time. They must have had a short episode and they're like, God, we really gotta make up some time.
Yeah, you know what this episode needs? More Jose.
Oh God. Like, if you need to extend the episode, he's the last person you need to extend it with. Ugh. Oh, another thing, a weird tidbit that I read in a way that they toned it down too with Jose is, I guess in the comics, it's insinuated that Jose is very sexually active, but he's still like a little kid. And that's creepy, man. That's so weird.
Well,
so I'm glad they left that out.
I don't think that he's supposed to be a little kid, though. I mean, as a clone of Von Richter, I think maybe he's growing at an accelerated rate. So maybe it's a different kind of story. I don't know exactly what's behind it though, but I do know he's a clone, so he's not like an actual biological child.
Okay, I thought he was like an actual kid of his or something. Like,
no.
I was like, gross, dude.
So I mean, that takes away from the grossness of it a little bit, but it still would have been really weird to try to explain that.
Of course, I mean, in typical fashion, our hero's going to get in there and stop things. He releases this. Jose's been keeping a secret weapon, this big old monster in a tube that he unleashes on Cybersix.
Yeah, I mean, this is also the catalyst for what is controlling these birds as well, because this is a giant, like, griffin creature.
It's a gargoyle chicken. It's a big old gargoyle chicken.
Yeah.
The battle with that thing was pretty cool. The way it gets defeated was really stupid.
Yeah, I was a little, like, weirded out by its teeth, because, like, it had a beak, and then it had teeth inside that beak, and I was like, that's kind of...
Yeah, that was creepy, man.
That's overdoing it, but...
Birds with teeth, that's a bad idea.
It's like, it gets defeated by like Data 7 jumping on its back and kind of biting it repeatedly until it just flies into the transmitter over the building, and it gets electrocuted. And then they close out the episode with laughter, and twice.
Of course.
And that's because at one point Lucas comes in and he's like this is where Lucas comes in to try to like help. Like, okay, so that's a soft ending. And then it goes again. I think, Cybersix tells him like, thanks for helping, and he's like, what are friends for? They let the bluebirds out of the classroom because the bluebirds are no longer possessed. I get it. It's ha 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 after like a tense episode, I guess.
Yeah. Why don't we close more things out by laughing? You know what? Like, okay, I'm going to give us some homework. Tomorrow, when you and I both go to work, whatever meeting we're in, we're going to close it out with laughter, okay?
I actually did close out today with laughter because someone tried to drag me into a meeting with like 5 minutes to go. And someone was like, oh man, are you running from the meeting? I'm like, yeah, I'm not letting somebody drag me into a 30-minute meeting right now. And we laughed and I left.
Good job.
So the last episode we watched for today's show was The Final Confrontation, Season 1, Episode 13, which is the last episode, and also the highest rated episode. And I'm not going to try to read the whole thing again because it's probably giving away too much. But in this one, Von Richter sends an island-sized living bomb to destroy Meridiana at midnight. Meridiana is the town, or Meridina is the town. I don't remember how to pronounce it. Meridiana, yeah.
Yeah, they find friggin' Cthulhu out there in the water. It's an island, but it's got tentacles, and it's got like an eye on it. I'm like, this ain't an island. This is straight up Cthulhu out there, man.
I did like that island. I thought it was a really cool design. Yeah.
I was disappointed when I found out that it was like, a robotic island thing. I was just like, oh, it's like a big old monster he made. No.
Yeah, I was hoping it was more than that, or like some kind of creature he summoned, but nah, he just made a big island, which didn't really need to be a bomb at all.
No, because it was destroying everything else with its tentacles.
It was doing fine, with just its tentacles.
This island approached the city and got in there and just starts wrecking everything. Yeah, so bomb unnecessary. That would have been overkill for sure. I did like, what's funny is it looked like Jack White from the White Stripes was driving Jose around everywhere. That was weird.
Oh, yeah.
And as this is happening, Data? I don't know. Is following Jose's caravan to this like forest bunker where the actual Von Richter is. And all the other episodes, Von Richter's just like Skyping in or something, and he doesn't actually show up. And this one, like we actually see him in person, and Jose's there and everything. And basically He's telling his son that he's going to blow up this whole city, like destroy it. And the son gets mad because he said, like, you promised this city to me, like I'm going to be in control of it. And he's like, no, sorry, I'm going to destroy it because that's more fun. I mean, it kind of starts this whole thing where I think, Jose being mini Hitler basically gets all mad about it and is like, mine, instead of nine, mine. Get it?
Get it.
Little Hitler humor for you. Don't get to say that very often.
But yeah, like since he is a clone of him, like he doesn't have any allegiance as far as like father-son connection. So he's just like, you promised me that I would be ruling this island. So, how dare you take it upon yourself to destroy it? So Jose is watching him like enter the password and these codes and things into the system when he's like accessing it. And that comes back later. So that's good foreshadowing of Jose actually using that against him at a later time.
One thing that was interesting about the base that they're into is they have like this lab with all of these like big old tubes full of the green stuff and all these alien looking creatures in every tube, and they're big. They showed them several times, and I was just kind of like, for the longest time. Well, at first I thought maybe like, oh, we're gonna see something happen here, because it seemed like they were gonna tease that, but then nothing happened with those the like next few times we saw it. But then we finally got to see them, and that was cool.
Yeah, it did do that a couple times where it's like one of them would glow or something, and someone would react to that, and then nothing would happen. You're like, oh, okay. I guess nothing.
Yeah, you're like, that's it. Okay.
But let me lay some groundwork for you on what those things actually are, at least according to the comics. So in the comics lore, since von Richter worked for the Nazis and worked for Hitler originally, he was like the scientist who was sort of head of one of the concentration camps. At any time any of the prisoners would die, he would bring them in and experiment on them. So I believe technically all of the cyber units, including Adrian, were previous Holocaust victims or victims of at least concentration camps. And they died, and then they were kind of brought back with cyber enhancements by von Richter. So I don't believe that they were completely like grown out of a tube or anything. And maybe that's the intention in this version, but I believe in the comics, like they were kind of resurrected corpses. And so,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so the idea would also be that these would be kind of the same, even though like the whole Nazi regime is over. Like von Richter then went into kind of not freelancing, but kind of went into independent work where he continued his experiments on his own. And so these are probably previous corpses as well who are being genetically, if even corpses, they may even have been live people who are being experimented on and taken through genetic mutations of sorts. And so that's why they're sitting in the tubes, and that's why they're all sort of deformed or malformed in different ways.
Oh, man, that's kind of cool. This episode is maybe, out of the three we watched, this is the only episode where I felt like I got to understand Cybersix a little bit, just because, I don't know, I just feel like there's been no window in the other two episodes to understand her personality or her drive or connect with her until here, where it's like the big island thing's coming, it's a bomb, and she knows it's von Richter's behind it, and she's like, okay, I gotta stop this. So she's goes and basically says goodbye to these two people that kind of mean something to her. One being Lori, and Lori, the only thing I know is that Lori was a student in Adrian's class when she was doing her, Adrian persona. And I think that was the one that that's the one that had a crush on Adrian. Like Lori had this huge crush on the teacher.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know how else Lori plays into it, not having seen the rest, but she says kind of like a goodbye to Lori as Cybersix, but gives her Adrian's glasses and then runs off. Also says goodbye to Lucas, where like they actually, finally kiss. Then she kind of tears away from him, like crying, and she runs off, to go stop the thing. But then Lucas runs into Lori on his little motor scooter or something, and they're like racing towards the island. And I think maybe that's when Lucas finds out that Adrian and Cybersix are the same person, because Lori shows him the glasses. But I don't know, like we don't really know it, and it stays kind of unresolved, honestly.
Yeah, it stays a little ambiguous, but I think that he does find out. But I like that they don't say it straight out. I think just Lori showing him the glasses is enough for you to assume that he now knows. And, even though the stakes are very high at this point. And what I liked about the kiss, though, what I thought was really funny was like when he starts to kiss her, she's like, "I'm not even human, Lucas." And he's just like, "Shh." Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're not human. Like, don't worry about that.
It's kind of funny and kind of pervy.
Yeah.
Like, put the finger on the lips. Shh, shh, shh.
Yeah. Shh.
He's robosexual.
But she really, what saves the day ends up strangely being Jose because of his need to be the person who takes over this city. He veers. So the creature, the island creature, is already well into the town, like tearing things apart, and it's set to explode in like, I don't know, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes or something. And he veers it off course because he remembered his father's password, as I said, or Von Richter's password, as I said, because he had watched him enter it previously. And then as it's coming back in, that's when Von Richter and Cybersix are having their sort of final showdown. Like you were touching on earlier, this is when the experiments come into play, because he unleashes them on her, assuming they're going to follow his will and attack her. But instead, they all end up turning on him because, as I said, I believe that they previously were survivors who were experimented on. So they still have that connection, at least some connection to their humanity, and therefore have the sense to attack this person who's done this to them. And even to the extent that one of them, or the one who's sort of near Cybersix, like points to the door and like essentially telling her to leave without using words.
The end of this episode and thus the end of the series, there is some parts I really like, some parts I didn't like. That was one that I thought was great. I like that the creatures turned on Von Richter, took him out. Even like they pointed towards the door, like you need to escape, because that thing was heading right towards them, and the bomb was going to go off. And it's, as the thing is approaching the compound, it's destroying that part of the land. And I got disappointed because like it looks like a tree falls on Jose and kills him, because even that happened even before Von Richter's taken out. But then we see later Jose lived, and I was like, man. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was, as she's running for the exit of this lab, she gets to the exit, the island thing blows up. We assume she's killed. And I thought this was cool. We get kind of faked out by Lucas in this cafe or bar or something, having a drink. He looks up, sees Adrian, but then Adrian like kind of fades away. And you're like, oh, he's just imagining Adrian being there. Like it was a fake out. He's walking outside and he stops and he sees an apartment with lights on and he smiles and that's the end. And I'm like, okay, was that supposed to have been Adrian or Cybersix's apartment or something? And saw that the light was on, and so that means that she's alive, or like I don't. Maybe they left it up for interpretation, but I don't get it.
I think that was the case. That was my assumption too. But still leaving it up to your own interpretation. But either way, that fills Lucas with hope that she may still be alive.
Awesome.
Well, Chris, looks like it's about time we reveal to our inner kids that they are, in fact, our cyber-enhanced genetic clones, then offer them the sustenance they need to survive in exchange for their thoughts on the show, Cybersix.
This show was kind of cool because it was like a lady Batman who fought against monsters and birds, but pretends she's a boy during the day, just like my Aunt Sandy when she calls herself Sammy. All I know is I don't like Jose, and I want to drown him in a small pond. But I gave this cartoon 3.5 bowls of gargoyle chicken cereal out of 5.
This show ended up being surprisingly cool in spite of how conceptually goofy some of it seemed. It definitely felt a product of its time, where everything had to be cutting-edge 90s cool. Cyber-enhanced people, Nazi mad scientist, cyber-enhanced person having their essence transferred into a genetically enhanced panther's body. Yep. Don't get me wrong, though. Even with all those elements, the core storyline didn't necessarily focus on them, so what could have easily been an all-out explosive action series turned into an emotionally driven narrative about an out-of-place genetic creation trying to find her purpose and coexist in the human world. Overall, I'd give Cybersix 4 big bowls of sustenance snack cereal out of 5, and recommend you check this one out. What I'm curious about, though, is that if Von Richter made 5,000 cyber people, did he also make 5,000 data felines? If so, were they only panthers, or could they take on other cat forms? Basically, I just need to know if my pet Sir Meowington is trying to kill me or not, because I have my suspicions.
You know what they say? Never trust cats for any reason because they're murder machines.
They do
It's an
say
old
that.
saying.
They do say that.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the vet tells you right off the bat. so-
Right. Anytime you bring a cat in.
Yeah, that's why they're part of the state of Kansas. Cats are illegal for that reason.
Is that actually true? I don't know what to believe anymore.
I'm going to leave it open to your interpretation.
No. Okay.
Now you know our pain. So do you have any final thoughts on Cybersix?
This was a really cool show, and it made me, if anything, more curious to check out the comic books because, as I said, a lot of it was toned down, but because I now know what the actual core story elements were that were toned down, I'm really curious to go back and see maybe what might have been glossed over some, or really, especially trying to make sense of how Cyber 29 being transferred into a Panther's body actually worked and how they made it make any sense. I don't know how long it is exactly, but I'm at least going to go check out some issues of that. Overall, though, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I think it was an interesting show. It was that first episode didn't really hook me as much until like the reveal that Adrian was Cybersix, and that didn't really happen till towards the end. But even some parts of it just felt kind of weird, and I had a hard time relating to the characters, as I kind of said, especially Cybersix, until that very last episode. There's a lot of things that felt kind of unexplained, but the art style was pretty sweet. And even with the weird rectangles, most of it was pretty nice and very appealing to watch and look at. The animation was really fluid. The fighting was great. So I think it was okay, but I don't see myself watching more of it. But I am interested in checking out the comics, so like you said.
To your point, I think that I will go back to the comics. I don't know if I'll watch the whole show, but maybe just to fill in some gaps. So thanks, Doggy Vision, for suggesting this to us. It's something I had never heard of, probably would have never heard of had you not mentioned it. So cool. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Doggy Vision 37. Oh, I wonder if he's related to Data 7 or whatever the face.
Oh, yeah. Maybe he's like Cyber 37 transferred into a presumably young cartoon fan's body.
He was a cartoon dog fan, but I don't know.
I always wonder, though, when someone has like a number in their name like that's a very specific like age number, if that is their age when they made it. It's almost like when you make something and you put like the year in there where it's like my old email, I don't remember what it was exactly, but it's like The Edge 95 or something. It's like, oh, I made it in 95, but it's not
Please
timeless.
tell me your email was The Edge 95.
No, that's not what it was, but that's an example. That's just trying to think of like, my point was, I wonder if he was 37 when he made it, or if 37 is just a random number he chose.
Or he was born in 1937.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I just don't,
I
couldn't
think that's
see.
probably more likely.
And Doggy Vision, like maybe he's 37 in dog years. It's so many questions. I don't know.
Maybe his vision is dog based, so he doesn't see anything but dogs. Unless the dog's around, he just sees like a sea of white, and then every once in a while he'll see a dog like running around in the background.
It seems like a superpower, but it's actually very much a handicap in every other way. If you ever need help finding your lost dog, though, that's the person to go to.
Yeah, yep, he's the one. Of course, he'll probably wreck his car or something because he can't see anything.
Yeah, don't let him drive. You should probably drive, but
Yeah,
he'll
you should
guide you.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll just tell you where the dogs are and who let the dogs out.
Oh no.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah,
You went there.
that happened.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, listeners, looks like our milk supply is now on dry, so it's time for us to say goodbye. Next week, we'll be watching
My Life as a Teenage Robot, suggested via YouTube by Paul Webb. What is with all the robots lately? I feel like we're getting a whole lot of robot-centered cartoons and stuff.
It's also one of the anniversaries of Terminator 2, T2. So more robots.
Congratulations.
Well, once again, I'm Joseph.
And I'm Chris, if you're still listening.
Yeah, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Presented by Nerdsloth.
A place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows. Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.